Why, hello there. I'm Sin. We're in the Book Nook, and today we're going to talk about a book that is about art, jealousy, societal boundaries, weird technology, so many things. And that book is Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Haung, and this is the first book I've read by this author, and it is weird. It's a really fascinating and strange read that kept me turning pages. It follows these two characters. The main character is this woman named Enka, and there is in the book, you're either an enclave or you're a fringe person. And these are these like boundaries that were created by this company that was called the Doll Corporation. And basically it kind of like segregates people. So the people that were in the enclave have like art and music and all this stuff and all this like access to it, where the people in the fringe have to struggle and get by and they don't really have access to that stuff. And the character Enka, who grew up in the fringe, she's an artist, but she has to hide it from her parents because she's not the child that her parents have been conditioned to want, So she hides her art from them and doesn't really share it with them. So eventually, she keeps doing it. She has one teacher who's really encouraging and ends up getting into this art college, the Berkshire College of Art and Design. And then when she's there, she meets this woman named Mathilde, or Mathilda. I'm still not quite sure how to say that name. I think it's Mathilde. Mathilde? Mathilde? Anyways, Mathilde is this very talented artist who can work in any medium and is just on genius level of artwork. Inca kind of becomes fascinated with her, and that fascination eventually they cross paths where they start to form a friendship. She sort of comes to the aid of Mathilde when she's at one of her darkest moments. She doesn't stick around for long because Mathilde just wants to be left alone. She's like, leave me alone, whatever. And then so from that point forward, whenever she walks past Mathilde's art studio, she would just put her hand on the window for a little bit and then walk on by. And then eventually Mathilda comes to ask Enka, she's like, hey, why were you doing that? And then they start to talk, and then it starts to build a friendship and all of that stuff. And so at first Enka is just like fascinated. She's excited to be around her because she's very inspired. But then eventually that all like kind of turns into jealousy. And as you follow like the character progression of Enka, you start to hate her as a character because she just does stuff like under the radar that is subtly really crappy. And Mathilda only ever had love for her. And like Anka would take care of Mathilda when she was going through dark and depressive times, but it all seemed like it was done selfishly, which is really crappy. And then as you get into the story, because Enka, her artwork that she worked with was in the vein of technology. So she's always doing stuff with like technology and art. And then this book comes into almost like a kind of sci-fi type vibe, which I thought was really interesting. She gets involved with this corporation, the Doll Corporation, who made this thing called a scaffold, where a scaffold can basically download the memories and data from a brain and put it on another brain. And at some point, they get to this part where you'll be like, they'll do it on humans, where the two who are connected by a scaffold, if someone's going through a really hard time, the other person can shoulder some of that burden so it's not as insane on them. And so it's like one person and another is like inside each other's heads. So it's kind of in the synopsis where this goes, where between these two artists, something like this happens. While it's a slow descent into being a really terrible person, in my opinion, of Enka, because she sucks. And it sucks because she was so talented, she just couldn't see it because she was so blinded by looking at this other artist. And that's a thing in everything that people do, like in your creativity, in your daily life, even people just comparing their houses to others or what they have monetarily. Like the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So she was so blind to her own talents that she was always just jealous of Mathilda, and she couldn't see her own successes and just kept like shooting herself in her feet and in her hands and everywhere. So that was kind of sad. It was sad to watch like the jealousy and like the unrealization of the fact that it's like, hey, you are actually talented, and maybe if you stop focusing on someone else, you could see that. But it is always hard to see like when you're down in your own crap and your own mind and whatever. And so it's a strange story. There's so much going on in it. It's about like class boundaries. It's about depression and just invasiveness of people's privacy to like the next level. with what I'm talking about, like the one-to-one scaffold thing, not necessarily surveillance or whatever, but it is like the surveillance of someone else's mind, you know? And it was such a weird and intense and page-turner read. I definitely want to read more by this author. I really like how they write. The writing is very descriptive. It pulls you into the story. You feel the emotions of it. You also see like some of the artwork and the stuff they were working on, and that's also very emotional too, and how they would pour themselves into what they were doing. And like, there's this one quote in it that I thought was pretty good, and that was, "Artists create works of art, geniuses create an emotional response." And this Mathilda, she would create emotional responses with her artwork. Whereas Inca created wonderful art. And, you know, not everyone can get that emotional response. And that was like part of another reasons that she was very jealous and whatnot. And the whole book is actually dedicated in the beginning when you read it. It's like for the jealous. And you're like, okay. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, yeah, I see what's going on. You see it too, though, like sometimes it is hard not to be jealous of others' successes, but you got to realize too, like they probably worked hard to get there. Although a lot of times people will just tell themselves, oh, it's all luck and this, that, and the other. And it's like, you know, maybe they're doing it for years and you're not seeing all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, you know, all the hours and the blood, sweat, and tears they put into it, you know? It's all these excuses you're telling yourself and your jealousy. Oh, it's luck, they blah, 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 you know, whatever. Anyways. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. If you like weird sci-fi out there reads, then Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Haung was quite fantastic, and I would definitely recommend it. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.